All right, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like Saeki, a content creator that makes some pretty critical analysis pieces about various gacha games, is back at it again, talking about a deep critique on Genshin and WuWa's mediocre story writing. How it's just not very good. And you can see from some of the chapters over here, they've got a critique on Natlan. That's only a couple of minutes. It's like 7 minutes, maybe 8. And then when it comes to WuWa and Rinascita, boy, oh boy, it seems like they're going off. Who knows if this is going to be really good or really bad? I see some cutscenes from 2.0 all the way to 2.2 over here. And what I wanted to do was take a look at it. Knowing that we've experienced a good portion of the story in both games, not a lot of Natlan, so we're not going to be as experienced heading into that. But of course, we've got a lot when it comes to WuWa. So let's see what this take is like, what it's all about, and get right on into it.
I personally think Genshin and Wuthering Waves have mediocre story writing. These are the two biggest open-world gacha games today, but there's something about the way their characters and plot are presented that I just can't get into. Static characters with only one trope, mountains of lore that's uninteresting or unexplained.
Uninteresting and unexplained? Okay.
Dialogue bloat that just keeps going in circles without any actual substance. This is a phenomenon that I thought Wuthering Waves would learn and be able to break out of, but I feel it's fallen into more or less the same trap. Why is it that even though both companies have written some good stories in their previous games, that they failed to keep up the momentum here? Today, I want to talk about it. Like, really talk about it. The more I looked into the topic, the more I realized that this trend of lackluster story writing may have seeped into the gacha space as a whole. Normally, I don't like discussing the big titles in the gacha market, but since this has seemingly become a trend in these open-world games, I want to make this video as a warning and critique on why I think this is happening and what people can learn from it. I know when tackling a topic as subjective as story, I want to make it clear that the information provided in this video is from my own opinions, and you are allowed to disagree or critique it.
Very fair to lead up the video like this. I'm glad that at least this disclaimer isn't like 40 to 50 fucking minutes long, like some of the other prior vids that we've seen. There are so many CCs that I feel like are like absolutely scared to just like outline that something is their opinion and that it's fine to disagree with it. And they feel like they need to like prep a fucking, basically a PhD thesis on why what they're saying is like actually okay. It's just your opinion. That's like it. That's pretty much all you need.
My name is Saeki, and after holding off on talking about
literally 10-second disclaimer, thank God,
storytelling in gacha games, let's finally get into it. If you know me, the story is one of the few aspects of a gacha game that I don't review. The reason for this is twofold. The first is that, as mentioned before, storytelling is extremely subjective. If your response to someone else critiquing the narratives is, "Well, I enjoyed it," that's great. I'm glad you did. Don't let anyone tell you how to enjoy your favorite game. It's like eating the food and listening to the music you like. Why do you like eating hamburgers? I don't know, I just like the taste of it, I guess. You don't need a concrete reason to like or dislike the story in any medium, and I feel it's sort of a moot point to try and prove that someone else is enjoying something the wrong way. The second reason is more specific to gacha games.
I will be fair though, there are some just very, very objective things that you can say about stories and storytelling specifically that are just like not good. For example, having Genshin Impact as like one of those games where something gets said to the traveler and then Paimon proceeds to repeat it 2 or 3 times, almost like a bit of like a memory check because it feels like you're not able to like understand what was said the first time. That's like an insult to the players in a sense, right? You're literally too dumb to hear this the first time, and so we're just going to repeat it multiple times. That's like a storytelling and medium for an audience that's like 5 years old, right? That's like what you would typically see in like Teletubbies or like Sesame Street, right? Like those fucking like children's TV shows that are just like, you know, meant to be designed that way. And when a game that's meant for a clearly more mature audience like Genshin Impact is doing the same fucking thing, I do feel like you could just objectively say like this is just dog shit. This is just a dog shit story experience.
As you know, some of them have extremely well-written narratives. One problem: gacha games also have this unbreakable curse that the story only starts to ramp up after a long way from the beginning. And as a content creator with limited time to spend per video, I don't know how far in before the story gets good, and I don't know how long it'll take for me to get there.
The rough part is that, yeah, these games, a lot of gacha games, they're like built upon like a very, very lengthy story. And sometimes if you're like new to the game or you don't have the time to go through it, you kind of have to take other people's word for it. You have to like see what the opinion is online of like, oh yeah, you should just like skip XYZ sections. This part isn't worth listening to, but this part is. And you're basically taking the subjective take of all of the people that have previously experienced the story and kind of like using that as like a benchmark for what you're going to experience. But that ends up like tainting your opinion, influencing it, all of that. And then, you know, as he said at the start, story and your perception of the story, it's all subjective at the end of the day. And so what you found good might not be what they found good when it comes to some of the past players. And so it just ends up being like a very tricky thing overall to like fully have like the best take on. That's why I personally don't make a lot of like story-based content. I kind of like fall into the same boat because it's like, yeah, like I can say I really enjoyed something, I really found it good, but I can't be like correct or have like the you know, like the empirically like 100% valid take on it. But storytelling though, yeah, you can be correct about that for sure.
To invest in something that might get good is simply not an efficient use of my time, and I should just explore the aspects of the game that can be judged from a more objective perspective. Now, storytelling and writing, while most of it is subjective, there are absolutely objective qualities that one can observe.
Just so you guys know, this is not pre-watched. It's just, we're just saying the same thing here. It's not pre-watched. It's just, that's, again, I was saying that they're facts for a reason.
These are issues that I find pretty prevalent in the two biggest open world titles out right now. Please note that I've thoroughly enjoyed playing Genshin and Wuthering Waves. I spent 2 years on Genshin and the past 6 months on WuWa. They both have many other good qualities that I can praise all day, but this is a critique on purely the story writing and nothing else. Also, since these two games have a sort of a war between the fan bases, just so people don't label me as a Hoyo or Kuro shill, instead of playing sides, I'm just gonna roast both of them.
Hey, you know what? It's a very common thing to see in the gacha space. People are too scared to critique one of these games in a vacuum. Or really, people aren't really too scared to critique Kuro games. They're too scared to critique Hoyo games in a vacuum. Because every single time, you'll see it in pretty much every single critique you ever have about a Hoyo game, people and CCs, and even like commenters and chatters, will feel the need to bring in Kuro games as like an additional, like a fucking, like an additional casualty into the situation whenever they talk badly about Hoyoverse. It's like they don't want to appear too biased or too anti-Hoyo, so they find a way to like loop Kuro games and Wuthering Waves into the argument. Yeah, like it's literally collateral damage every single time. Like you'll see it no matter what. Like we even saw it right with like fucking I think people were talking about like Honkai Star Rail or Cat and Casterus, and like we ended up with like WuWa in the discussion, even though it's a completely different genre of game. Because we're talking bad about Hoyo, we need to make sure that Kuro's being mentioned as well, so we don't appear too biased. You'll see it every single time. In every single type of video.
To establish some rules, I understand that certain creative directions can be restricted by the live service model of gacha games. You can't really expect them to do any major branching storylines or altering the world to a drastic degree. Any choices that the player can make is inconsequential or minimal at best. Maybe it changes how a small portion of the world looks, but these games can only tell stories in a linear fashion.
True.
It's unreasonable to expect any player choices that actually amount to much. And that's just due to how these games are set up. There are plenty of ways to tell a good linear story, but this is the first thing I want to bring up. Something else that open world games can do easily compared to other genres is environmental storytelling. This is actually done pretty well in both games, and it can be done in multiple ways. Since Teyvat and Solaris 3 are littered with regions and sights to see, random loot in the world can often lead the player into side quests and other rewards. If there's something shiny or interesting, players will naturally be drawn towards it. It's like when I explored Rinascita in Wuthering Waves. Wandering the streets, I noticed there is a polymorphed bathtub creature. It's then that I saw a prompt to enter it, and your character will just sit in it while the tub lazes around. This doesn't do anything, but it's still cool and goofy to experience. Later on, while exploring the region, I saw a boat in the midst of a dark ravine. I boarded it, jumped through a waterfall, and was greeted by a breathtaking vista. The game didn't tell me to do these things, I found them out myself, which makes the experience more memorable and organic. Presentation is clearly the strong suit of these games. Both cutscene and environmental designs are stylized and flashy. There's a shiny coat of paint on top of whatever story is being told. I don't think many would argue that these games look bad from a visual perspective. They're often a sight to behold, and I can even recount some instances I stopped exploring just to take screenshots.
Did you see the podcast of Genocide with HSRCCs? They were discussing about Casterus' global passive, and Mr. Pokey brought up Cantarella being Gooner bait in the discussion out of nowhere, and the debate shifted towards WuWa becoming a Gooner game. That's just what it is, right? It is what it is. It is what it is.
And I can even recount some instances I stopped exploring just to take screenshots. Now that we've gotten the pleasantries out of the way, let's discuss writing.
Okay, so he got the good part out of the way. That was about a minute and 50 seconds of glazing. What else do we have in store?
Now that we've gotten the pleasantries out of the way, let's discuss writing. For this video, I will be honing down on Genshin's Natlan storyline and Wuthering Waves' Rinascita storyline. Both are the most recent major explorable regions in their respective games.
Yep.
I will be bringing in callbacks from other portions in the story, but I will be mostly narrowing down on these two specifically.
Okay.
Let's start from the absolute fundamentals. A common question that I often ask myself when it comes to engaging with story writing is, why should I care? The first piece of the puzzle begins with setting expectations.
That's pretty based, actually.
The central goal of Genshin's traveler revolves around finding his or her sibling. This is their ultimate objective when wandering around the world of Teyvat. While most of the regions sidetrack the traveler quite a bit, the interlude quests guide you back on track while giving just enough motivation to remind you what you've been fighting for all this time. I often enjoy these quests as I felt more connected to the traveler at a personal level, and when I felt my motivations were most aligned with the traveler's. When Aether finally meets with an image of his sister, it gives off a sense of catharsis that you just don't often feel while playing the game.
You're the only one in this world who calls me that.
Is this a romance scene?
Journeying to Natlan was a bit of a strange feeling right after having completed, in my opinion.
Didn't it sound like one? Didn't it sound like one? Don't fucking play. It sounded like one.
One of the more emotional interlude quests, as I felt that Natlan didn't have any direct leads that would allow the traveler to reunite with their sibling, but rather they were just journeying there just for the hell of an adventure. To start, however, I actually quite liked the first act of the Natlan Archon quests. You meet Kachina first, an aspiring warrior hoping to participate in the upcoming tournament.
Aspiring warrior. She looks like a 10-year-old. She looks like she's vacationing in like a tropical island, and like she's there from like East Asia, and they just decided to like buy a bunch of like random clothes that like look like they fit. It's just there's no way.
But her former allies doubt her strength and leave her without
She looks like a Pokemon trainer that had one level 9 Rattata.
a team. This might be a wild take, but Kachina, in my opinion, is the only well-developed character in this questline.
Holy shit. Wait, that's like... Is he talking about the entire Natlan quest? Wait, what happened then?
She has some degree of personality, has personal aspirations, has room for growth, and serves as a good vehicle to introduce you to the region. There's even a portion of the story later where she reminisces on callbacks to your adventures. Yes, the only character I felt some sort of emotional attachment to was a 4-star.
Damn, I guess Natlan truly just was not worth playing.
As you roam the painted cliffsides and lovable wildlife, you meet Kanich and Mulani in preparation for a tournament to decide the best warrior that will lead the nation to battle the Abyss. Again, Act 1 is a good start. You have the excitement of a competition to flow into how the Nation of War does its traditions, while also introducing the Pyro Archon, Malvika. There doesn't need to be a lot of stakes since the job is to welcome the player to Natlan's distinct culture, and Act 1 does it really well. In the Nation of War, when worthy warriors are killed in combat, they can be resurrected via the Ode of Resurrection. Shortly after, the inciting instant is when the sacred flames start dying out, and fails to bring back Kachina after she fell in battle. This actually upset me a bit when I got to this part, since I felt more connection to Kachina than any of the other Natlan casts. I think seeing her fall in battle would have made it hit even harder, but hey, this is a family-friendly game. We can't chill stabbing, that's way too violent. In any case,
Catherine was a robot, that's why they showed the stabbing.
The nation must find some way to rekindle the fire and repel the Abyss before it's too late. Not to mention before the general populace notices and loses morale. Malvika had already come up with a plan to defeat the Abyss. By resurrecting herself while Natlan rebuilt itself 500 years ago, 6 warriors will be chosen that would eventually fight alongside Malvika against the Abyss. It's admittedly a clever and ambitious plan, and it does show off her reliability as a leader. It's then that the Fatui Harbinger, the captain, comes to take the region's Gnosis. He argues that since only half of the 6 warriors have been chosen, a better strategy is to use the power of the Gnosis to strengthen the ley lines in Natlan instead. He wishes to achieve the same goals, just with a more extreme method. This establishes that the captain shares the same interests as Natlan and has some ties to the region. Whether or not he has ulterior motives remains to be seen at this point. There's a couple other chapters featuring the other Natlan cast members, though I wasn't able to form an emotional connection with them, to be honest. Most of them came off as rather friendly to the traveler, and aside from surface level development, there was no significant change to their relationship. It's hard to get invested in their characterization if all their personality and motives are expressed through dialogue instead of being shown what they actually do. For example, Shilonen is an expert craftsman who knows her way around a forge. One of the main driving forces of the
You forgot that she's a DJ too, buddy.
plot is forging something called the Ancient Name for the traveler. Given that they are a foreigner, it's especially difficult to forge one, and she goes on a tangent on just how impossible the task sounds. Well, a couple acts later, she just forges it.
Wait, really? So she spends like all this time talking about how hard it is to do this and then just does it? I feel like Natlan went through some rewrites. I feel like Natlan had to have gone through some mid-development rewrites. They were probably just like, we fucked this up. How do we save it? And then in the effort to save it, I believe they just fucked it up even more.
And gives it to you. One of the most important plot points of the entire arc just happens off camera. Thanks, I guess. One of the other frustrating aspects is the characterization of Malvika. She's regarded as too perfect, and that's kind of the problem. When a character only has one side or trait to play off of, then they can rarely be considered as multifaceted or dynamic. These traits are more suitable for your generic one-off NPCs and side quests, but for a character that's considered the focal point of this region's entire story, it pales in comparison to what MiHoYo was able to achieve with the previous 2 nations. I'm sure some will be quick to point out that Malvika has other backstories in the form of an animated short that portrays a more vulnerable and humanistic version of herself. But something I want to bring up is that when it comes to consuming any type of media, whether it might be a TV show, movie, or game, aside from the direct media itself, very few people in the community actually engage with content associated outside of it.
You shouldn't have to read external materials or like watch external videos to know what's going on in the game. It should just be what's in the game. Like, I should be able to get the full experience just seeing what's in the game. 1,000,000%.
Even you watching this video represents a minuscule minority of the Genshin or WuWa's community. The majority of players won't even know that this short exists. And if such important details relating to character development is out there, then why isn't it portrayed within the game?
I hope that he doesn't have a similar critique to this for WuWa, because 1,000,000%, WuWa's character trailers, they reference stuff, right, in the character's past, but I haven't seen a single WuWa trailer that isn't covered in the character's, like, story quest. I think about every story quest WuWa has had, and, like, the information about the character that gets shown in the trailer is always, like, doubled down on in the story quest, and you never have to actually know about the trailer to get the full message.
This is far from the first time Genshin does this, and Wuthering Waves has even...
Yeah, like Cantarell's a great example, Jinxi's a great example, Chang Li's a great example too. It's just like every single character
followed in similar footsteps. Lore implications relating to a character shouldn't be hidden in a profile page, a separate manga or animated short, or in the most egregious of cases, locked behind a time-limited event.
I'll admit, Zhang Liao's quest needs to be playable. That's a big miss on Kuro's end, is still not having Zhang Liao's quest playable, because Zhang Liao's quest actually gets referenced in the 2.2 story, and the fact that it isn't playable is like kind of a big deal, because you had to have been playing during 1.2, which was like a filler patch, right?
The second aspect that the Natlan storyline lacks is conflict. I'm sure everyone learned the literary techniques of writing conflict in high school. There's many ways it can be created, and even more ways to express them. Man versus man versus self, man versus society, man versus nature, you name it. Conflict is the central obstacle that the protagonist must overcome to achieve a goal, and it can be split into other smaller conflicts that creates even more nuance or develops a character in some way. when two allies start disagreeing with something and things get heated, when the protagonist starts doubting themselves and breaks down in denial. Any conflict the Natlan storyline portrays is either quickly resolved or trivial in nature. Whether external or internal, conflict is a major driving force in creating urgency and tension, and it's something that's not explored nearly enough in these two games' writing. Anyways, eventually, the Abyss lays siege on Natlan.
So basically one of his big critiques for Natlan is that the conflicts that do occur, they're resolved way too easily, like they're introduced and finished like very, very fast, and there's like not enough time for like things to breathe, that sort of stuff. I mean, I could definitely see it, right? It's like, you can't leave things unfinished for a patch. Can't have cliffhanger endings here.
There's a pretty cool Warzone minigame where you have to defend certain points on a map and the amount of casualties are tallied on a chart. I'm sure the intention was to show the brutality of war, though it's hard to care about those that perished in the war because they're just numbers on a screen. It's like how if you see an NPC with the generic face and eye structure, then you know they're not going to end up mattering. Genshin has established a rule that playable characters cannot die. This already removes some emotional baggage because none of the important cast is actually in any danger. Nothing of value is lost, and Malvika shows no sign of doubt or weakness amidst all this. The final warriors are chosen, and the team ends up defeating the Abyss, accompanied by very flashy visuals. However, the Abyss is not eradicated from
Sorry, I need to see this again.
doubt or weakness amidst all this. The final warriors are chosen, and
oh, that's so soy. Why you gotta make the MC look like this? Why is he just gripping onto Mavuika's waist, like hanging on for dear fucking life? Like, why are you making the MC look like this? Why is he? Why are you making him why are you doing him like this? Oh, come on. He just looks like a little bitch here.
the team ends up defeating the Abyss, accompanied by very flashy visuals. However, the Abyss is not eradicated from Natlan for good. So after the Traveler receives their ancient name, they tag along with Malvika into the Night Kingdom to put an end to everything. As the battle concludes and the duo emerge victorious, amidst all the celebration, Malvika goes missing. As it turns out, being able to access the ability to resurrect fallen warriors came at a cost: the eventual death of the Pyro Archon. As Malvika goes to the god of death to sacrifice herself, the captain arrives at the last minute and offers to accept him as a substitute instead. He explains that he was once a Conrian that fought in the war 500 years ago, and was given the curse of immortality. In order to release the souls of his fallen comrades into the ley lines, he offers to be merged with the Lord of the Night, altering the rules of the ley lines so that the souls of Conrians are accepted too, while also allowing himself to be freed from the curse of immortality. A perfect solution to the conflict.
So, was any of this, like, past for Capitano, like, established? Where he's being, like, haunted by the souls of, like, millions of his comrades and all of this stuff? Was there, like, any build-up for this? Or was it just, like, literally out of nowhere? It was just out of nowhere. It's like, oh, by the way, my name's Capitano, and I have, like, all these fucking problems. Conveniently, I will come in and take on your position, Mavuika, and I will solve my problem and your problem all at once. Was it kind of just like that? Okay, yeah, okay.
This is what most refer to as a Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah, that's exactly the terminology I was going to use. When you just have, like, the most convenient solution that almost feels like it was given to you by God. Like, how conveniently he solves the problem.
In storytelling, a plot device where a seemingly unsolvable problem is conveniently resolved for the protagonist without logic or setup. Nobody knew that the captain held the curse of immortality or his backstory until he walked in. There's a lack of build-up to this moment, so the resolution feels less like the cast earned it, but rather, they got lucky, and it just happened to work out. The Traveler is showered with praise for the length of an entire quest, almost to the point of comical. Look at me having a jolly time. Wait, why am I in Natlan again? Something about finding a lost sibling? Now, I hope you haven't forgotten about Wuthering Waves.
I mean, damn, he kind of just... I guess this is the thing. Bro kind of, like, just took a fat shit all over Genshin. Now I'm wondering to see what he has to say about WuWa, because the WuWa section is longer.
Because as much as I thought a sci-fi apocalyptic world will be able to break Genshin's curse, I was wrong. I recently played and completed the Rinascita storyline up to the most recent Act 4, the latest expansion that borrows influence from Italy, and its map suspiciously resembles a page out of Elden Ring, but that must be in my imagination. Worth mentioning that the Rinascita storyline is technically not entirely finished. though the first 3 acts released in 2.0, with the 4th having been released just a few days ago, wrapping up a portion of the arc nicely. You can make the argument that it's not fair to judge an unfinished story, but the way I see it, 2.0 already presented a fairly complete storyline, with the additional arcs tagging on after it, and I don't see how the story would end that would change my opinions. Now, Rinascita has improved the game in many ways in general, and I'll be making a 1-year review on the game sometime this month, but in my honest opinion, the story was not one of its improvements. The world of Wuthering Waves takes place on Solaris 3.
So, right off the rip, he's saying that Rinascita improved a lot, 2.0 improved a lot, but there was no improvement on the story. That's a bold take. Let's see where this one goes
With a
here.
humanoid enigmatic being known as the Rover descends on the planet. They're on a journey to figure out who they are and what their purpose is. A quest for self-actualization, if you will. The primary issue I have with Wuthering Waves' overall story premise is that it's too abstract. The Rover's quest for self-actualization is too vague to have a goal to cling on to. Unlike Genshin's Traveler, whose mission is to reunite with a loved one, is relatable and tangible, finding one's purpose in the world can literally be about anything. I don't know what the Rover's end goal is, so it's harder for me to relate to them as a protagonist.
Wait. Him not knowing what Rover's end goal is has me really wondering if he's actually played the story. Because the goal of Rover is to stop the lament. It's pretty clear from 1.3 that the goal of Rover is to stop the lament, is to stop the world from ending. That was clearly outlined, that they've gone through like multiple iterations, right? Like they made the Black Shores to stop the lament, did all this stuff to stop. And so to just outwardly say that he doesn't know what Rover's goal is, it means he wasn't listening. It's very clear. It's just because the laments end the world. The port city of Guizhou was like a terrible tragedy, and like we want to make sure that none of this stuff happens again. It's clearly outlined.
Wuthering Waves follows the classic Chosen One trope, where the Rover is portrayed as very powerful, wielding extraordinary abilities. They possess great combative skills and are generally well liked by everyone. I feel there's a lot of parallel in the characterization of the Rover compared to Malvika. Once you draw the comparisons, a lot of the same problems start to arise. 1. At no point in the story does the Rover actually struggle or sacrifices something significant to achieve something.
Did he skip 1.3 entirely? There's no way. I just mentioned the port city of Guizhou being like one of the most tragic things that ever happened. And then Rover like went ahead and like did the whole like memory wiping thing because of the port city, because it was so tragic. And like they completely failed. They completely failed in their mission. Did he like only play 2.0? Yeah, Rover chose to wipe their own memories. And the port city of Guizhou was like the pivotal moment where they were just like, damn, we fucked up so bad. We fucked up so unbelievably bad. I need to like reach into my back pocket and choose like the most tragic or like the most like crazy option to try to solve this. It's been a while since I played the 1.3 story, and like, yeah, no, I still remember all of this. That's really weird framing at the start. I gotta say, the framing here is really odd because a lot of the stuff that he's just said right now, it's just not true. But I guess this is the thing, right? He did say that this was like his opinion and it's subjective, but he's just like wrong. Like the things he's saying right now aren't opinions, they're just wrong. To say that Rover never struggled when the memory loss at the start is like the pinnacle of their struggling.
Every battle ends in their triumph, and it gives off the impression that they can overpower any foe.
No, they failed. That's why they wiped their memories and the game starts. It seems like he actually did not play 1.3.
In other words, a lack of conflict. This is a far cry from what Kuro Games was able to achieve with Punishing Grey Raven. I'm making my way through the campaign, and I gotta say, what the hell happened with Wuthering Waves' writing team? In PGR, there are numerous times where you actually lose. A new foe is just too strong, and you either have to face some losses or sacrifice in order to continue.
Shorekeeper dies! In 1.3, we lose against Cartithia in 2.2. Guys, because she dies and then we go get her, but that doesn't mean that she didn't die first. Just because we get her back, that doesn't mean that she didn't die and that we didn't lose. Her getting sucked into Tethys is a loss that we then proceeded to address and then make a victory out of it. Guess what, guys? The scene he's showing over here of Lee from PGR dying, well, Lee's actually still alive because he doesn't like fully die here. Because otherwise, how the fuck would you have Lee hyper real? He's using an example of a character that like dies but then comes back, talking about how PGR's story is better. The same thing happens in WuWa where Shorekeeper dies and then comes back. So like what's this is the thing, right? We're using Lee where he dies and comes back in PGR, but then suddenly Shorekeeper dies and comes back in WuWa is like not relatable.
You are not always the hero in the story, but it makes the payoff in the end just that much more worth it. You can't experience the highs without feeling the lows. I often found that because of the vague premise, I found myself having some difficulty relating to what the rovers' actions are. I can tell they have some way to convene with the deities of this world and are supposed to fill a big role. Yet I have no clue what it is, nor has the game given me a reason to care.
Wait, but he has played 1.3.
Take the Black Shores questline for example. We learned that the rover played a big part in building this place, and that their loyal companion Shorekeeper has been waiting for their return. The issue is, I don't know what the Black Shore is. I don't know who Shorekeeper is.
Who said he was cooking here? Who said he was cooking? There's no way he's cooking here. Is this a joke? Guys, you guys were all up in here saying, oh, base take. Oh, this video is so based. Oh, he cooks. The 1.3 quest spends like 4 hours telling you what the Black Shores and Shorekeeper are. 4 hours giving you the exact answer to this question. What is the defense here? What is the defense here for this take? Is there anybody that is able to like explain this? It literally, there's like even like articles. There's like, I remember explicitly saying in a video about the Black Shores, their mission is to save the world. I remember explicitly saying that in multiple videos. Their mission is to save the world. Oh,
so
God.
Instead of experiencing a heartwarming reunion, I feel like a third wheel watching from afar. Like, I can tell you're very close.
Liquid's over here asking, what does that mean? You do realize it's saving the world by preventing the laments. You fucking absolute ding-dong. It doesn't prevent...
The issue is, I don't know what the Black Shore is.
You do.
I don't know who Shorekeeper is.
We do.
So instead of experiencing a heartwarming reunion, I feel like a third wheel watching from afar.
I feel like the only way you could have that opinion is if you skip the quest. Maybe he means he personally, as a player, he doesn't feel the connection. Yeah, and I'm saying he probably doesn't feel the connection because he skipped the quest.
Like, I can tell you're very close to one another, but where am I in all this?
Well, you'd find out if you played the quest.
When Aether finally enjoys a short reprieve to chat with his sister, I share his sense of longing. The build-up feels proper, as even the player knows that they haven't been able to get together like this in a while. You can't expect the audience to care about a relationship between two characters without any setup. Which again, ties back to that original question.
The entire 1.3 story quest is about why you should care, because of all the huge sacrifices that Shorekeeper made to keep the Black Shores running while you were off, you know, doing your fucking amnesia adventures, and how, like, people have been following you this entire time, making sure that you're okay as you go off on these...
For the record, I don't have a problem with the unpredictability of Wuthering Waves' overall premise. Some might argue that the Traveler obviously can't reunite with their sibling until the entirety of Teyvat is unlocked, given the live service nature of the game, and I can certainly see some validity in that. A lot of the best gacha game stories I've read in the past also have fairly vague premises, but something that makes those click for me is how self-contained each portion of the story is. For example, saving humanity is obviously a very abstract concept. It's usually broken down into smaller chunks so that it makes more sense why you're doing certain things. Take PGR's Chapter 16 for example. You know, same company at all. The punishing virus's effect on the Earth's surface is as great as ever.
Is he just gonna spend this entire time talking about PGR?
In order to have a chance of developing a weapon that can combat it, a mission was devised to send the Grey Raven squad to the front lines of an operation to extract a sample from a densely corrupted area. Your squad is chosen because of your recent victories that will further bolster hope should you succeed. The overall goal of the game is pretty vague, but each chapter presents a tangible goal that you're working towards. But let's talk about Rinascita. What's that all about? Well, Solaris' environment often Alright,
I'm not gonna lie, I'm already gonna be very skeptical. I'm just gonna preface this by saying I'm gonna be super fucking skeptical about his takes on pretty much everything in Rinascita because of the fact that he just butchered everything when it comes to 1.3 and just said we don't know anything about anything, and like there's no clue or context for what's going on, when that was the entire duration of like the 4 or 5 hour 1.3 quest. It looks like he just saw some of the cutscenes and then decided to like make an overarching, overlapping take on the entire thing. Yeah, so that's just...
experiences natural disasters known as the Lament, where certain locations warps and transforms, breaking the logic and physics of the world. This results in the wave-worn phenomenon, where laments can create gates where deformed creature-like beings known as tacit discords spew onto their environment. And they can take on many forms based on the wavelength of the disturbance. Defeating one may transform them into an echo, in which you can harness their powers yourself. During the rover's journey, they manifest a small creature from the tacit mark from their hand, which they believe to be an echo. However, Abby is fully sentient and can speak, a trait unlike other ordinary echoes. After the Black Shores questline, the rover decides to venture to Rinascita.
Wait, so why did he like cover 1.0 and then like he just doesn't say anything about 1.3? He just says after the Black Shores questline, where you find out everything about why anything is going... Wait, where'd Mount Firmament or the Black Shores go?
A region well known for its echo.
He wanted to focus on Rinascita. Okay, so why do we spend so long talking about how everything's vague in WuWa? We spent this long talking about why everything is vague in WuWa and how like we don't know what the Black Shores is. We don't know what Shorekeeper is.
Technology, in the hopes of figuring out exactly what Abby is and why its frequency seems to be fading. Plus, a vision of the rover's past self says that they have once made a pact with the Imperator.
Okay.
I got no clue who that is yet, but sure, this is a good step in the direction of figuring out the rover's identity. So, let's do it. Your wife, Shorekeeper, explains that the rover even received an invitation from the Montelli family.
Okay, so we're still gonna call her wife, though.
One of the major ruling factions in Rinascita, requesting their aid and granting entry into the region, so there's no reason not to go. This is a good start. It gives you something to cling to, though my main gripe is that aside from being a quirky mascot character, the story has not made enough effort to build up emotional ties to Abby.
Abby is the reason why we're able to get Shorekeeper back. Abby is the reason why Tethys is still functioning, with Shorekeeper not being its core.
But hey, this goal is definitely related to their quest for discovering who they are, so maybe I'll just see how the story goes. As they set sail in the dense fog, they're shipwrecked by a giant whale-like beast, and are saved by Captain Brant's ship. He presents himself as friendly and hospitable, while you meet his crew of cuddly-shaped echoes. Even the ship itself is one too. You get a slight glimpse of a sinister-looking flower embedded into the whale that attacked you, hinting that maybe it was under some kind of mind control.
You would know that it is under mind control because in the 1.0 quest, you see Frivola with flowers on echoes and she controls them. Wait, why is he talking about like it's a mystery? When it's like, you knew about the flowers in 1.0.
As Brant bids you farewell at the harbor and into Raguna City, you're greeted by Phoebe, an acolyte of the Order of the Deep, the de facto governing body.
Alright, I think I'm ready to ban Liquid. He just said we don't know that the licorice flowers are from Frivola. I'm done with it.
Town. You surely meet Zani, a banker that works for the Montelli family that offers to show you around. As you lounge around for a meal, you witness an echo suddenly attacking people. At the last second, you see a brief vision of the Sentinel.
Yeah, the Montelli echo attacks the Montelli people. Oh yeah, it's totally not under mind control. For this one echo to specifically only attack us. Just get evaluated. Go to a hospital. Get tested. For what? I don't know. You have something. Just go get tested, Liquid.
At the last second, you see a brief vision of the Sentinel requesting your aid. Carlotta, the daughter of the Montelli family, explains that Rinascita's echo technology is restricted to the locals, but there lies a way to make it available to everyone. However, the Order believes that this technology is too dangerous to be shared with the outside world and should be safeguarded. But Carlotta believes that they just wish to harness its powers for themselves, hence why she invited the rover here to help with ending this dispute. During your investigations, you find evidence of the Order, the Phasalia family, and the Fraxidus attempting to throw the region into chaos. Even some in the Montelli family has been corrupted to join their side. This scheme seems to go deeper than it looks. You end up separated on a nearby...
His summary of 2.0 is like not bad. It's actually pretty complete. It's pretty complete. It's not missing too many crazy details. It really just makes me feel like bro actually just skipped 1.0 to 1.4. He just skipped the entire thing, just summarized it based off of incomplete details, and then jumped into 2.0.
By island. It's then that you meet...
That's what this video really seems like. Yeah, because this whole section over here of claiming that you have no idea what's going on in the Black Shores, when 1.3's entire story quest is about exactly what he says he has no idea about. It's... why?
Brent once again. He explains that when someone has broken a law of Raguna City, the Order proclaims them as fools and banishes them to this realm part of the Pilgrim's Sale, which they must meet with the fabled sentinel of Rinascita and atone for their wrongdoings. Unexpectedly, this desolate place full of destruction is the actual place that all fools end up, and all they really meet is their doom. Brant survived the sale and formed his crew to help others that end up here with a new purpose and a new life. This basically cements the Order as a overtly evil faction that condemns criminals to death. The fools come to the conclusion that the opposition will try to disrupt the upcoming carnival happening in Raguna City. So after practicing a dance with Carlotta for some reason, you set for the festival, just in time to foil the plans of the Fractsidus. The Order, pleased with the crew with restoring the peace, offers a cooperation that will allow them to perform within the city. This marks the end of 2.0, but there's still so much that needs to be answered.
You can tell by the way that he framed the dance that he's kind of hating on the story a little bit. Remember what he said? You just dance with Carlotta for some reason? This is the reason you dance with her.
In the city.
To get the laureate crown. Because you have to do a performance. So you can get an audience and speak with the sentinel and speak with the... Who said this video was good? You can just tell by a lot, like, how so much stuff is being framed over here. It's not really being framed very accurately. It really isn't. Like, it's... I get it. He's trying to shit on the game, but, like... We could, I mean, yeah, let's just use the framing that he's trying to shit on the game. But yeah, if he is doing that and just trying to say shit like that
in Raguna City. So after practicing a dance with Carlotta for some reason,
we know what the reason is for. It's practicing improv so that you can earn the laureate crown and get an audience with the sentinel.
You set for the festival, just in time to foil the plans of the Fractsidus. The Order, pleased with the crew with restoring the peace, offers a cooperation that will allow them to perform within the city. This marks the end of 2.0, but there's still so much that needs to be answered. What was the relationship of the Fractsidus with the Order? What was the Phasaelius family's role in all this? So let's analyze this part. In case you notice there's a lot of jargon and foreign names that were brought up, you'll be absolutely right. It is complex, and if you really dig into it, there's a lot of information to appreciate and digest. But the player isn't presented with a good moment-to-moment story. Aside from that, I never felt emotionally invested in any of the Rinascita characters at this point.
Yeah, I guess that's just entirely personal. Hey, his favorite character from Natlan was Kachina, so hey, whatever is his take, it's his take.
They're neutral or friendly to the rover, have no character arcs or development, and have no noteworthy traits or actions that make them memorable, aside from some fan service.
Wait, is he just disregarding everything in Carlotta's story quest? And he just decided to select, like, the one scene where he catches Carlotta, where the rover... He didn't do the companion...
Not to mention, it gets the rover no significant progress to figuring out what Abby is.
Oh, so he doesn't want to talk about Phoebe struggling with the fact that the Order's, like, actually evil and she's one of their acolytes? Are we just gonna not... Did he? Maybe he just skipped 2.0 too. Because, like, you would surely be able to talk about the intricate mechanics of, like, Phoebe being a tool for the Order to, like, do evil, but Phoebe's actually, like, a good person. So there's, like, that juxtaposition of he did. Oh, so why is he saying that everyone is just surface level when Phoebe's, like, a clear example? I mean, honestly, obviously, fucking Carlotta too. Everyone. Okay.
Yes, which is the reason why they traveled here in the first place. It's the same set of problems as Natlan. Now, I'm not saying that the entire plot needs to follow the rover's quest for self-actualization, since I don't have a problem with writers just doing their own thing and creating a contained story just for this region. I'm saying that the payoff is just not there for the long runtime that the first 3 acts had.
I'm sorry, I need to go. I'm sorry, give me 1 second. We're saying that this is not payoff? We're saying that's not payoff? Alright, man.
So does Act 4 improve the story? Well, actually, I would say it does do a couple things better. This arc involves finding out the identity of Cardathea, a mysterious girl that appeared at the end of the Carnival. Basically, there are 2 types of deities in Wuthering Waves, Sentinels and Threnodians. The Sentinels are essentially the guardians of humanity, aka the good guys, while the Threnodians represent destruction and unleashed chaos across the world. They both have their respective resonator that's supposed to be, in a way, their right-hand man. According to Fenrico, the Primus, or head of the Order, he is the rightful resonator to Rinascita's Sentinel. Meanwhile, the girl you see before you had deceived everyone in the events of a catastrophe 20 years ago, and is actually the resonator for the evil Threnodian instead. I will say, in terms of the writing, I did feel a couple moments here and there that made me feel attached to Cardathia whilst exploring a gravity-defying floating ruin. I'll save the critique for the environmental design in a separate review video, but overall, because the story focuses on bonding with a single character, that it actually achieves some degree of development. Oh, I guess Canarella's there too, but she's just kinda there on the side.
Did he skip this quest as well? Wait, did he just say Canarella's just there? No, he's just joking, right? No, he's just joking, right? This is an April Fool's joke. It's just late. Cause Cantarella is the Sentinel's resonator that he was just talking about with the whole Fenric.
If you also notice, none of the previous characters in the first 3 acts are involved at all. At most, Carlotta leaves you a short audio message before she sits back in the cuck chair.
And there's a literal reason for why they're not there. Because it just so happens that Cantarella is the only person with the key to the new area. Because the Sentinel's locked in the tower, and then she's the Sentinel's resonator, so she has the key to get to the... It feels like he didn't play it. It feels like he didn't play the story. Am I just being wrong? Wait, am I like wrong here? Am I being like way too crazy? Am I crashing out right now by being critical here?
Game has shifted the story's focus to the next set of cast at this point. Even so, because of the majority of
they're literally releasing Zani in 2.3, and so she's gonna have a story component.
For screen time is focused on Cardathia, not even the one other character involved in the plot is given enough time to develop.
What? Why is everybody saying that Cantarella's implementation into the story was one of the best things they've ever seen? Why is every single person talking about how amazingly they characterize Cantarella and how she saved Rinascita and how she's the real hero of 2.0? How are people having only positive glowing review of her, calling her the MVP if what he just said is true?
I'm someone that judges a character's actions not in the degree of impact, but rather the emotional meaning it brings.
Wait, so he's saying there was no emotional meaning to Cantarella sacrificing the awakening of the Sentinel's powers and then giving it back to the Sentinel so that the Sentinel can save itself? Wait, he's saying there's no emotional impact to that at all for her making one of the biggest sacrifices possible and allowing the Phasalia family name to just be all people spread all these negative rumors and stuff. She was basically going to become God, a demigod in Rinascita, in Raguna, but she gave it all up to save Fleur-de-Lis and the Sentinel. The Blessed Maiden is dead because she's basically saying that she kind of Minecrafted herself. And then we see the part about her recharging the sacred sword with juice, Turbine with juice, and then she's clearly drained from doing that, but then still hangs around to fight off the TDs so that Rover and Cartithia can get the job done. We're saying there's no emotional impact to that? Oh god. Bro, I do think I feel like he just skipped the entire story. I feel like he just saw a couple of cutscenes and then just skipped everything else. Where is this take coming from?
If Mortefi walked up to the rover and said, "I just solved world hunger and found the cure for cancer," my response would be, "Cool, I guess." Mortefi is an extremely minor side character that barely has any presence in the story. So anything he does, even if it's the most heroic deed ever, has no meaning to me.
So, is he just not incorporating in any of, the negative stigma surrounding the Phasalias? And, how the Phasalia name is basically, dog shit in the entire region? And the fact that even that Cantarella has been only doing, good things the entire time, basically saving the world, while, under the guise of, this dog shit shitty family that's, causing crime and doing all this terrible stuff. And she's, bearing the weight of, her family's name sins, and then also saving the region and the Sentinel at the same... Are we just not...
The degree of impact of his action is high, but carries no emotional significance. Now, I'm a big sucker for romance stories. One of my absolute favorites to this day...
So we're saying she's just...
is 2000...
We're just saying that Cantarella's basically just Mortefi, and that it doesn't matter if she did anything at all because, she's just... Like, what?
4's visual novel, Clannad. The protagonist, Tomoya, is just a regular high school delinquent that found a new purpose in supporting a new family with his loved one.
I'm not gonna lie, people that are abusing the skip button like this, fucking slapping it like it's Varisa's ass, like, bro, they need to, like, why make all these critical videos? Why make all of these critical videos about the story that we're not watching?
Both of them are neither rich nor extraordinary. Residing in a small house, Tomoya's body aches all over after a grueling day of working as an electrician.
This section is so long because he'll do anything except talk about WuWa's story. We got like PGR, we got PGR again, we got fucking Clannad, we got fucking...
Just as he slumps home tired and beat,
probably because he doesn't have anything to say about actually WuWa's story because he skipped the entire fucking thing.
Nagisa is there to welcome him with a meal. In this turbulent society, Tomoya realizes the weight of adulthood, and he now has a purpose protecting and nurturing this small family.
Who cares?
Maybe everything will work out in the end. The degree of impact is low, but the emotional weight of the action is high.
Bro was talking about like some fucking like child. Wait, so like this is emotional, crazy emotional impact. But again, all the shit I just said about Cantarella, where she's bearing the weight of the Phasalia name, but then doing everything in her power to constantly be saying Raguna and like saving Rinascita and the Sentinel, giving up like the Sentinel power and doing all the giving up the Second Awakening. This dude's just coming to Clannad, but he can't. What? Hey, it's subjective. You're right. No, you guys are right. It's just his opinion. That's true. It's just his opinion.
This is what I want to see in storytelling, because building a unique bond with a character takes a lot of effort. And this is why Cardathia feels more organic, since the game has actually spent an entire arc dedicated to spending time with her. As for everything else though, I can't say the same. So when Cantarella sacrificed the powers she obtained from a Second Awakening, that sacrifice is meaningless to me. I don't know what struggles she faced while making that decision.
Maybe the part where she gets poisoned every day? Maybe the part where she gets poisoned every single day and is constantly on the verge of death from her own mother and family?
The story has not built enough rapport with her to know exactly what that entails. It's the Shallonen Ancient Name case all over again.
No, he's just making shit up now. No, he's just making shit up at this point. No, he's just lying. Hey, it's his opinion, but he's also just lying.
Later the same evening, I read the first section of Punishing Grey Ravens, chapter 17. And it is a night and day difference. So much so that I almost can't believe the same...
We just left out like every single detail regarding Cantarella and her character, but now we're gonna go ahead and read PGR's entire chapter.
company made both games. Stuck in an overcrowded refugee camp with limited supplies while enemies are closing in, the Grey Raven squad must find some way to evacuate everyone to a safe place. All the while, the
Bro, 1000% skipped Mount Firmament's quest. Because we clearly saw during 1.1 where Jinsei goes under her second awakening, she almost dies. And we see firsthand the physical impact that going under a second awakening has on the person. They basically overclock severely and almost die and turn into a TD. And basically, Cantarella went through the whole second awakening, did all of the overclocking, almost died, and then gave up the power after doing that. After going through that entire hardship, she just gives up the power. If you had played 1.1 and not skipped the entire thing, you would know how much of an emotional sacrifice that is, because you would have seen Jinsei suffering firsthand. You want the evidence? You guys want the proof? Does this look easy, guys? Does it look like Jinsei's just having a good old time here? Oh yeah, no, that looks good. Yeah, no, that looks, yeah, that's just a normal day, and that's just a normal day in Solaris 3. Oh yeah, no, that's normal. What are we doing here?
Commandant is still unconscious from a previous injury. Even though the place is cramped with nameless NPCs, the writing does an extremely good job of capturing the hopelessness of the situation. The unrest of the crowd is there might not be enough time to evacuate everyone. The small glimmers of hope as Liv performs a song amidst the despair. the troubled debates in the upper commands on how to combat the newly evolved enemies. This is visceral storytelling. It's not that Wuthering Waves' writing doesn't have anything to show for it. It's just that compared to the game that the same company has made, it is a laughable downgrade.
Okay, now we're just going ahead. I swear he's actually just fishing for random reasons to shit on the game at this point. It is his opinion, it is subjective, but it does seem like he kind of is just looking for reasons to shit on the game.
I think a good twist would be if Cardathea was actually the Threnodian's evil resonator.
She is. Wait, why is he saying like it would be she is? Guys, I'm at a loss for words. I'm at a loss for words. He did not play the quest. Hasn't he just been wrong about so many things? Or just omitted so many key details? I felt like I was being maybe a little bit... I feel like I was maybe being a little bit too critical like over here. But like now, I feel like I should have just been more critical. Like, how are we saying that it would have been a nice twist when that's actually what happened in the story? We're saying like, we're talking about it like we didn't do it, but that's just the actual story. Cardathea is the Threnodian's resonator. The twist is in there. You skipped everything.
And she was just stringing the rover all along to fit her own agenda. And that Fenrico was actually in the right. It would flip the narrative entirely on its
He is right. She is the Threnodian's resonator.
head and subvert everything you know about Rinascita.
We did subvert everything we know about Rinascita. Everything we know is subverted.
The comically evil guy wearing the ominous mask was the righteous one all along.
He is. He's just lying about being the Sentinel's resonator, but he was right about everything else.
Now that would have been something.
That's why everyone is saying 2.2 is one of the best story patches ever, because it has so many twists and turns, but everything makes sense, and then it like follows up amazingly on what happened in version 2.0. Because Fenrico laid all these seeds in 2.0 that blossomed in 2.2.
To sum it up, do I think Wuthering Waves has better storytelling than Genshin? My answer is a resounding no.
Honestly, he's perfectly fine to have that opinion because he clearly did not play the game. This is an uninformed, misinformed take that is created from not fully recognizing anything that's actually going on in the story. We've already listed out all the various examples. He said we have no idea what the Black Shores is about. We have no idea who Shorekeeper is supposed to be. We're going ahead and we're saying that, like, we have no idea why we're even in Rinascita, or maybe, I don't think he said that one. We said the characters are completely one-dimensional when they're clearly not. We are just saying so many things in here that are just straight up our opinion, but they're not backed by anything that's in reality.
Critiquing the story is one thing.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's just, I can understand why he's making this take. It's because I think he just has no idea what he's talking about. I actually do think he skipped everything. He read, like, summaries. Probably, like, he pressed the skip button and then saw what the summary was and decided that was, like, everything. We just omitted so much detail about Cantarella. We didn't talk about anything when it comes to, like, the significance of a second awakening. It literally seems like we just skipped the entire 1.3 quest. And honestly, we talked about, like, the twist over here about, like, how it would have been cool if Cardathea was actually the Threnodian's resonator, but she is. And so it's just, I don't even know what he knows.
But I will say this. One of the most frustrating responses from hardcore fans that I see whenever someone brings up a critique is, you just don't get it.
That's not my critique. I think you fully get what you understand. You just don't actually understand anything. You get it based off your fragmented understanding that you have from skipping everything in the game and reading summaries of cutscenes and stuff and drawing your own conclusions from it. Because there's so much stuff in here that is just wrong.
These stories are actually really well written. There's so much lore and background info that you're not understanding. You fail to notice the finer details that make you appreciate the writing.
There are clear references to version 1.1 and the significance of a second awakening, and we just said it's basically the same exact thing as, like, fucking Mortefi curing cancer, just randomly out of the blue, when we should know, assuming you didn't skip everything in the story, you would know the struggle of a second awakening and what it does to a resonator.
That is true. Both entries, especially Genshin, have a rich backlog of all the lore and timeline happening during and before the events of the game. So much so that some people online are dedicated to discussing Genshin lore. I'm not saying that a complicated story is bad. Quite the contrary. I think a good story should be complex with many moving parts. But this is where I disagree with some of these fans. People are not stupid. The average player can easily understand the lore and the background info.
It is ironic that he said this when he has absolutely no understanding of what's going on in WuWa. How are we making this point when we just have said things like, we have no idea what the Black Shores is for, we have no idea why Rover's fighting, like what their existence is, when all of these questions were literally answered in version 1.3. And then we talked about how like a second awakening doesn't fucking mean anything, when in the story quest it literally does a callback to Jinxie and how badly she got fucked up by her second awakening.
The issue is that it's not done in an engaging manner. Humans are innately curious. If you present a scenario that's intriguing to follow but leave behind some subtle unexplained lore crumbs, people will naturally want to learn more and seek out additional knowledge that could help them understand the story better.
I can probably look back in my chat history later. There were so many people that were saying this video was good. There were so many people that were saying that he was like spitting during this entire video. I feel like you guys are like actually fucking like the human version of sheep. If you guys watch a video by yourselves, it's almost like leaving an infant in the kitchen alone with like knives everywhere. It genuinely feels like a CC could just make a video, say anything, and you would believe it. Because how could you have seen this and seen the section, have played WuWa, and then said anything other than, what in the fuck is he even saying? And if that's not the immediate first reaction from you, it's just like, how gullible can you be? They're also skippers, probably. Like, there's so much stuff in here that's just wrong.
Both Genshin and Wuthering Waves have this weird fixation that somehow throwing many specific and complicated jargons and info dumps on the history and changes of the local regions makes the player more engaged. It doesn't, and it only serves as fluff to make the story more bloated than it needs to be. One of the biggest offenders is exaggerated by Paimon. She often just recaps what was implied by the dialogue and tells you exactly how you should be thinking.
Okay,
here's
we're
a
back
brief
to valid
snippet of
critiques.
when Mulaney and the gang follow the Archon to express their concern for the deceased Kachina. As the scene plays out, Malvika was able to calm them and guide them towards the next goal. As a viewer, you can easily read between the lines and infer that she is a capable leader able to quell the concerns of Natlan's people. So, what does Paimon interject with?
Wow, Paimon thought things were gonna get heated for a second, but the Pyro Archon took the time to explain everything so patiently.
This kind of interjection by Paimon hurts the dialogue in two ways. Not only does she take away any possible nuance that the player can interpret from the dialogue by explicitly telling it to you, she ends up bloating it with useless information even further.
Okay.
Putting the bloated dialogue aside,
we're back
the
to valid
moment-to-moment
critiques,
story
ladies
must
and
be
gentlemen.
good in order for the player to care about the lore.
We're back to
not
valid critiques,
the other way
ladies and
around.
gentlemen.
I can even demonstrate that with the
Notice how that was one of the only times he's actually played a clip from the game. Notice how that was one of the only times he's actually played like an excerpt of like dialogue or whatever from a game. He's kind of just been like not really doing that for anything else.
same game. I'm sure a lot of people clicked on this video and are almost shouting at me. Genshin does have good story writing.
Nobody's shouting at you for that.
Just look at Sumeru and Fontaine. I say, you are correct. Ask anyone in the community. Most would agree that the storyline for these regions were major step-ups for Genshin.
Why are all of his Genshin takes, like, I'm not even trying to be like a shill one way or another. All of his Genshin takes are entirely valid. It's just, what in the fuck happened to the WuWa section?
But why? Why are they generally considered so by the community? Let's look into this. I want to pinpoint a certain quest in the Sumeru storyline that stuck out to me, and I'm sure to a lot of other players as well. The exact moment that made players realize that Genshin can tell a good story if it wanted to. Act 2. The Morn a Thousand Roses Brings. The Subsurus Festival. Dunyarzad, a devoted follower of the Dendro Archon, arrives at Sumeru City in hopes of reviving the Subsurus Festival, a day that celebrates the birth of the newly appointed Archon. Since she was struck by a terminal illness, she wishes to see the celebrations one last time before it's too late. After a day of seemingly ordinary festivities, you find that the Grand Sage of the Academia disapproves of the festival, and has cancelled the dance of Subsurus in which the dancer Nilo was supposed to perform. Saddened by the news, Dunyarzad bids the traveler farewell. Reluctantly, you head to bed after a long day. But upon waking up, the traveler finds that the day has been seemingly reset, and every time that they sleep, they get stuck in an endless loop repeating the same day's events. And with each passing loop, Dunyarzad's body grows weaker. Following the traveler and Paimon's discovery of this after many loops, you can feel the frustration start venting up as the traveler already knows which cup at the guessing game contains the best candy through the dialogue choices all containing the same options. That's a really clever way to express the silent protagonist's thoughts without any spoken lines. It's then that the duo notices a childlike figure that sticks out from the crowd. The child introduces herself as Nahida, but doesn't reveal her identity yet. However, she seems very knowledgeable with Sumeru's Akasha terminals, and looks to be the key to unraveling this mystery. Following a deduction minigame, you now have to gather what you know of the time
This is annoying as shit.
loop phenomenon and how to break out of it. What happens if I try to eat something I've never eaten before? What happens if I try to leave the premises of Sumeru City? What happens if I take off the Akasha terminal? In order to solve this conundrum, I have to understand how Sumeru's Akasha system functions. You now have a sense of intrigue and urgency in order to break out of this unknown force keeping everyone in the loop, and help
Are we just going over... Okay.
Mirzad
It's
recover.
almost done, this part.
But this also introduces the lore in an engaging manner. The audience now has a reason to care.
No, they don't. I'm gonna be real here. I think we're a little bit overly glazing Sumeru over here. This was just annoying. Or again, subjective opinion. My opinion is this was just fucking annoying. It just took forever, and it made you have to like keep track of super minor details that you don't really care about too much.
Also introduces the lore in an engaging manner. The audience now has
No, it's not really engaging. It's more that if you don't pay attention, it's gonna take you 20 minutes to get through this section, and nobody wants to waste their time doing that. And so it's like a gamer up moment where like, you know, you sit up in your chair because you don't want to like waste your evening doing this.
Going through this story quest, I'm reminded of an alternate
You know what? If he likes this shit, no wonder he fucking hates WuWa.
ending in the
He
2010
loves this shit.
visual novel Steins Gate. Branching off from the main plot, the protagonist Okabe can choose to use the time leap machine to transfer his consciousness back by 48 hours, in order to prevent one of his friends from a tragic death. In this route, Okabe would have to experience the exact same 2 days over and over, while his friends and the rest of the world all live in ignorant bliss every time the timeline resets. Eventually, his senses are dulled by the same events repeating indefinitely, to the point of losing his sanity. What started out as a noble goal of preventing his friends from dying has turned into a nightmare. Each loop is a fresh new adventure for everyone else, but for Okabe, another needle jabbed into his mind as it deteriorates further. Some of my friends think my actions are questionable, but who cares what they think? Who cares if I intentionally try to put one of my friends in danger? Who cares if I say things that are out of character? Everything would just reset itself anyways. In these 2 days, I am the god of this world. Eventually, Okabe is driven mad by the same monotonous cycle over and over. He begins to form some very dark and intrusive thoughts. After all, no matter what crime or heinous acts he commits, everyone will be none the wiser once the
I really
clock
don't
rewinds
care.
again.
I
If I'm stuck in this perpetual loop of immortality, I might as well enjoy it. No one can tell me what I can or can't do within the law.
What the fuck are we even looking at here?
Theft, assault, murder. Think of the possibilities. Barely able to
Wait, where did...
suppress the urges, he wonders how long he can hang
I'm not even gonna rewatch it.
on for. That is, until one loop, the self-proclaimed time traveler Suzuha notices the strangeness of Okabe, being cold towards his friends, and seems like none of the nerdy scientists everyone knew, pulls him aside and alludes to the unsatisfying conclusion to the movie Groundhog Day, and drops the following. You've been here before, haven't you? Now, I won't spoil the ending of this route in the visual novel, but this is my benchmark for quality when a story is doing a whole bit on time loops.
I think this is the take that maybe we should go forward with. This guy really likes visual novels and like visual novel style storytelling, like reading a fuck ton of stuff and like doing like all this shit. And I guess WuWa just doesn't have a lot of that ridiculous like fucking dialogue flow and like exposition jump. It shows a lot through cutscenes and unique like visuals. This guy's a professional skipper as well for WuWa, I guess, and so he just never ends up seeing the cutscenes, and so half the story just isn't there for him.
To see Genshin of all games trying to pull this off is pretty remarkable. Fontaine was also a surprise hit in terms of writing quality. The storyline opens with a trial to prove the innocence of Linny, the traveler's newfound friend, in court against the Hydro Archon, Farina. This first act knocks out 2 birds
Is he just summarizing all
with
of...
1 stone. Not only is it a fun little deduction minigame Ace Attorney style, it also introduces how the Nation of Justice operates and what its leader is like. This bratty pipsqueak is the one governing over the nation? While I thought the overall Fontaine's Archon quest had hits and misses, like how some characters clearly matter more than others, or how the whole Meropede section was dragged out and uneventful, something where the story
This is really giving me HC casual vibes. This entire section over here, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like I've never felt more disengaged listening to something than this section over here.
really treads new grounds is how much they can make you root and care for a character. I think Furina by far is the best written character in Genshin. She acts childishly innocent around small pets, pleads for her life when threatened, and silently cries in her room afterwards. There's something very human about that. Showing a vulnerable side like this just isn't something you see Genshin writing do. Everything looks cheerful when Furina parades around the city, but as time goes on, you can tell that behind the facade, something isn't quite right. She's putting up a front amidst having a tragic backstory, and it's your job to figure out what it is. In order to save Furina from a cruel fate, you have to understand what Fontaine's prophecy is regarding the Hydro Archon. Again, just like the Sub-Zero's festival, the player now has some emotional attachment to a character to cling to. Not only is Furina given time to grow within the story, it has also organically incorporated complex lore so that the player now has a reason to learn more about it. Everything ties back to that original question. Why should I care?
What are we arguing for again? I guess.
Sumeru and Fontaine clearly had a competent writing team behind it, so it was kinda weird to see Hoyoverse relapse with Natlan.
Okay, we did all that just to say Natlan is shit. I agree with you.
Better luck next time in Snezhnaya. Now, story is obviously not the only aspect that any game has, but I think it's extremely beneficial for gacha games to invest in good writing. This genre has a lot of potential in building emotional attachment to its characters, and some quality writing can significantly drive up the interest in which players are more willing to spend money to pull on them.
Yeah, that's why Cantarella's banner was actually JP. I do believe it was at the top of the PSN store. Cantarella brought WuWa to the second of the PSN store, so I guess like everything, I guess she did do it right if that's where she is.
So why is this happening? Why have the two biggest open world gacha games gone down this path?
WuWa has definitely not. No, again, it's just, I do believe that a lot of his Genshin critiques were pretty valid, pretty okay, but I feel like a majority, more than 50% of the stuff he's saying about WuWa in this critique over here is just, like, actually not true. He's summarizing stuff from the game, he's talking about stuff from the game that didn't happen, or he's saying we have no knowledge about these things. He doesn't have knowledge about those things, because it is clearly revealed to us all these things he has no knowledge about. They're revealed to us in the story. We know exactly what they are if we played the quests. And all it leads me to believe is that he skipped a bunch of stuff, didn't do the content, no references at all to 1.1 in Jinxi's Second Awakening when we're talking about Cantarella's, and it's just no references at all to 1.3, where all the details about the Black Shores and Shorekeeper and the reason for Rover's existence are fully revealed. To like just be so confident making these statements and like just say WuWa's storytelling is going downhill or like gacha games are going downhill, it's like, what is going on?
Well, I actually have a pretty good theory for it. This is something I like to call the gacha motive of storytelling.
Oh boy.
I'll start by asking a simple question. How do gacha games make money? Well, through the act of players pulling on the gacha. These games make the majority of their revenue on characters, not the music, not the events, and not the open world. You can do all that for free. In other words, it's their job to sell these characters to you. A simple fact about gacha games is that it must release new gacha targets over time to retain existing players. This can inevitably lead to character bloat, where either only some of the cast is actually relevant, or everyone just has surface level development. Because of the way these games are monetized, this motive can influence how the story is written. There can't be any nuance in designing playable characters' morals because they must be marketable. They must be shown in the most virtuous and positive light to incentivize as many people to pull for them. Any trait or personality that could enter them into a morally gray area might discourage a player from thinking they're the most ideal pull target and potentially spend money on. We see this approach in both Genshin and Wuthering Waves.
That's why Cantarella just poisons people in her trailer. You're right. That's why Cantarella just straight up kills 2 people in her trailer by poisoning them. You're totally right.
These stories tend to cast a wide net, introducing many characters into the gacha roster instead of honing down on a small, focused cast. This approach is also the reason why characters don't seem to develop or change, at least in a drastic way. Wouldn't it have been so cool if Lisa accompanied the traveler to Sumeru, given that she's literally a former academia scholar? Or if Yang Yang went with the rover to Rinascita to see the sights? This would have been interesting to see their relationship with the protagonist change and how their perspective affects the story. One problem: building up existing characters with more lore means taking away screen time from a potentially new character that could be marketable for players to pull on. The thing about having morally gray zones is that while a player might find one faction more relatable, picking one side means becoming enemies with the other. This cannot happen between two playable factions in a gacha game. It's never to a developer's advantage to design a character that people are actively rooting against. This means that while they might be inclined to pull a character from their liked faction from the gacha, there will be less reason to pull a character from the other. This is not ideal for the monetization model these games have.
I think he's relatively fair about these points, because they are pretty general. But this is also the thing. The fucking Fatui Harbingers? I don't know, Camellia tried to kill us like 3 times. Like, she literally tries to kill us in the story in 1.0. Like, she literally ambushes us.
They want to give reason to pull all of the characters. Limiting that potential is just hurting the revenue numbers. The easiest way to do this is simply by having the surface level development so that no one feels too alienated from one faction over another. So how can one solve these issues in order to have a well-developed and dynamic cast in a gacha game? One method is to simply re-release a new version of a character once they have gone through enough change. Their voice lines and personality reflects their changed self. An alter character, if you will. Both PGR and Honkai 3 does this a lot, actually. It's an indescribable feeling, because both MiHoYo and Kuro Games are known to have written some very good stories in their previous games. And advancing to the top of the gacha industry has somehow caused them to neglect one aspect that a lot of players look forward to.
Because the series of PGR and Honkai Impact 3 are very self-contained and take place in a very small area. Like, I feel like there's just not recognition of that. Why not use ZZZ as an example of like a story that's contained in a really small area? And so because of that, you don't have a need for a wide roster of like characters and units and personalities versus like a game like WuWa or a game like Genshin that's supposed to span across multiple regions. It would feel dumb as hell for a game with like 6 or 7 regions to have the same characters popping up all the time in all 7 of the regions. Yeah, and HSR takes place on multiple planets. That's more of a critique of the world design than it is of like the characters.
2 steps forward, 1 step back. Story and world building tend to be my personal gauge whether I want to stick playing a game continuously. I know myself and a lot of people want the storytelling to be good to feel immersed in an ever-changing world. So I strongly encourage the new open-world releases like Arknight's Enfield, Azure Parmelia, Ananta, NTE, Dual Knight Abyss to invest in some good writers.
The only thing those games need to invest in, if they want good words from Saeki, is to invest in good skip summaries. Invest in making sure that your skip summaries are as consistent and like as full infoed as possible, because that's the only thing this dude is gonna read.
Make me care about the world and its people. Don't shoehorn a bunch of one-dimensional characters in the attempt to make them marketable. Anyways, you heard me overanalyze free mobile games for the past 40 minutes, so
Or just remove the skip button, because Genshin is like the only story he actually has details about. The way that he describes WuWa's story, it literally feels like it was taken from like a Wikipedia article. It's ironic that he talks about like surface level stuff when his breakdown of WuWa 2.2, I said it was like somewhat correct, but it's so surface level, it looks like he just read the synopsis. And there's no digging into any of the actual intricate details of the plot like he did with Genshin.
let me know what you think. Did you agree or disagree with any of the points made in the video?
Oh boy, oh boy.
I'll continue to enjoy
you already know
both
the answer
Genshin
to
and
that
Wuthering
question.
Waves, but this was a topic that was on the back of my mind for a while.
Wuthering Waves did not need to be in this video. That's what I'm gonna say. Wuthering Waves did not need to be in this video.
If you want to catch more highly
This would have been a perfectly fine video if this WuWa part is just taken out completely and you focused on Genshin Natlan.
specific analysis on gacha games, you know what to do. Thanks for watching, and as always, have fun out there.
Yeah, no, this one was rough. I'm gonna be real. You can see from the reaction over here, we were like pretty on board until he just started talking about Wuthering Waves. And he just came in with a bunch of like pointed remarks about like how we don't know anything about anything. That's him. He doesn't know anything about anything because he's just missing basic fundamentals of the story that have been told in previous versions. And we're talking like we're an expert, like we've experienced everything, and just making solid facts about the game, about the story, about the progression, when we just don't know what we're talking about here. And yes, it is his opinion, but his opinion is being fueled by his lack of knowledge. This section of the video is just so absurdly long, and like so filled with like so many like bad examples and bad analogies that are only fueled by, again, his lack of understanding and experience with the actual story. Yeah, I mean, this was a rough one. I really don't know why there were so many people telling me that this one was good, because this section over here, it has to be genuinely one of the worst breakdowns of like WuWa's story I might have ever seen. Actually, one of the worst breakdowns of WuWa's story I've ever seen. Let me know what you all think. Peace.